such a joy to be able to go inside this exquisite little building. And what was amazing about being inside was noticing that it still has all its original furniture from the 18th century. I understand that the furniture is actually made of walnut, but painted with a trompe-l'oeil effect to make it look like it's bamboo. Everything about it is exquisite. And it does remind me of some of the pavilions and pagodas in China, which I visited in recent years, where it was sometimes difficult to tell if it was millennia old or a replica built in the past few years. The fact that this pavilion has its original furniture roots it firmly in its 18th century chinoiserie self. A number of years ago, a friend and colleague from Shanghai visited me in London, and I invited her to go with me to see one of the most beautiful parks in the city, Regent's Park, and in particular to see the roses in Queen Mary's garden in the centre of the park. It must have been June when she visited, because the roses were looking absolutely glorious at that time. We met first in my home and we sat in the kitchen drinking tea. And when I suggested that we moved on to the garden, she said that she was reluctant to go with me, and she felt she had to tell me of some history that meant that she would not consider visiting the garden. And she told me the story of the sacking of the Summer Palace, or Yuanmingyuan, in Beijing in 1859, and the destruction of the palaces, pavilions and pagodas, and the looting that took place at that time through the actions of the British and French troops during the Second Opium War in China. Initially, apparently, the troops ransacked and looted the gardens, taking many precious silver, porcelain and jade objects. But then, after their envoys were murdered by the Imperial Chinese forces, they enacted a brutal revenge and destroyed the whole vast area of the Summer Palace gardens. It took 3 days to totally destroy and burn all the buildings, and it was left a ruin. This history is still very fresh in people's memory in China. They are taught it in school. And I think that learning about this pernicious episode of colonial history meant that my friend was unable to join me to visit this equally beautiful garden in London. And looking at this little pavilion here, we may think that it's just part of the 18th century European chinoiserie, a Western notion of what a Chinese pagoda is. But there is another side to this fascination, less well known. The Summer Palace in Beijing included many European Rococo-style palaces designed by Italian Jesuit artist Giuseppe Castiglione for the Chinese imperial family, and they too mirror both European Baroque, Rococo and Chinese styles in the way that this little pavilion also mirrors both a European idea of what a Chinese building is like. So there has been this quite extraordinary fascination through trade and colonial expansion particularly that enabled these two cultures to be influenced by each other. The images that I placed in the pavilion, the drawings, were actually Giuseppe Castiglione's designs for some of the buildings inside the Summer Palace, and I put them there to mark this mutual interest in the Baroque. I always love coming here. It is a veritable refuge. I love the grounds and the old trees. I love walking along the paths, visiting the little pavilions and other houses built here. But I also love the little palace, the old palace, and its scale. It's at a very intimate scale. Everything about it is very friendly. People respond to it with great fascination. They spend a long time looking through the windows in the interior. I did myself when I first came here. In a way, also, being inside it, you press your nose against the window to the park, so there's this constant conversation between the exterior and the interior of the little palace. This beautiful place with its romantic garden was built in the 1780s by Antoine de la Calmette, and it was named after his wife Lisa. This little neoclassical manor house or palace was designed by architect Andreas Köckerup for the couple. Lisa de la Calmette's father, Reinhard Iselin, was a wealthy merchant with business interests in the Danish West Indies, the Danish Asiatic Company, and the Danish Africa Company. I wonder if he left his daughter money or property which enabled the building of Liselund. There is such a wide history of beautiful houses and estates built during the 18th century, including in the UK, the Netherlands and Denmark, that were fueled by wealth created from the colonial interests of the owners, including, in some instances, the slave trade. Much of this history is only recently being discussed in many countries.